Quick reminder, your free World Cup 7 Facts chapter guide and the full World Cup Bible 2026 ebook for just $77 are linked below. Now let's get into the luxury world of two football icons, Karim Benzema and Zlatan Ibrahimović. Subscribe to Football Luxury Lifestyle so you never miss an episode. Two men, two completely different roads to the top, and yet somehow the same destination, a level of wealth, fame, and influence that most of us can barely picture. Have you ever wondered what actually happens to a footballer's life once the money stops being about winning a match and starts being about building an empire? Because that's exactly what happened to Karim Benzema and Zlatan Ibrahimović. Two names that don't just belong on a score sheet anymore. They belong in a conversation about business, branding, and legacy. So sit back, because today we're going deep into the fortunes, the choices, and the very different philosophies of two of the most fascinating figures football has ever produced. By the end of this, you might find yourself asking a question you didn't expect, not who scored more goals, but who actually built the smarter life. The boy from Lyon who became a king. Every great story needs a beginning, and Karim Benzema's begins far from the marble floors and private jets he's known for today. Born in Lyon to a family of Algerian and Kabyle descent, Benzema grew up in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place that shapes a person more than any trophy ever could. Football wasn't a hobby for him. It was a way out, a way up. And from a young age, it was obvious he had something different, a touch, a vision, a calmness on the ball that made defenders look like they were standing still. He broke through at Lyon, becoming the club's top scorer and a league champion before most players his age had even settled into professional life. And then came the moment that changed everything, a then-record transfer to Real Madrid in 2009. Nobody could have predicted what would follow. 14 years. 25 trophies. 5 Champions League titles. A Ballon d'Or in 2022, arriving almost like the football world finally paying its debt to a player who had quietly been one of the greatest of his generation. Here's the part that makes his story so compelling, though. Benzema was never the loudest name in the room. For years, he played alongside Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the most magnetic personalities the sport has ever seen. And Benzema simply let his game speak. No theatrics, no chasing headlines, just craft. He absorbed the pressure of sharing a dressing room with some of the biggest egos in football history, and somehow came out of it more composed, not less. Think about that for a second. How many people could stand in that kind of shadow for a decade and still walk away with more respect than when they started? And maybe that's exactly why, when he finally stepped into the spotlight fully as Real Madrid's undisputed leader, the world respected him even more. His final season in Madrid is still talked about like a piece of football folklore, carrying a team through the Champions League almost single-handedly, scoring impossible goals in impossible moments, turning entire stadiums silent with a single touch. It wasn't just brilliance. It felt like destiny finally catching up with quiet, patient greatness. Now here's a question worth sitting with for a second. What do you do after you've conquered European football at the highest possible level? For Benzema, the answer came in the summer of 2023, when he shocked the football world by signing with Saudi Arabian club Al Ittihad. It was a deal reported to be worth close to $100 million a year, instantly making him one of the highest paid athletes anywhere on the planet. Some people called it the end of an era. Others called it the smartest business decision of his career. And in many ways, both were right. A new chapter, a new empire. Benzema didn't just show up in Saudi Arabia to collect a paycheck. He delivered. He led Al Ittihad to a league and cup double, scored freely, and became the face of a football project, trying to prove that the Saudi Pro League wasn't just about money, it was about ambition too. He surpassed the 500 career goal mark, a milestone reserved for legends, not just stars, and did it with the same quiet efficiency that defined his entire career. But football, like life, rarely stays simple. In early 2026, after months of speculation, contract tension boiled over. Benzema reportedly felt disrespected by the terms Al Ittihad offered for an extension, a deal that would have leaned heavily on image rights rather than salary, effectively asking him to play for close to nothing on paper. And instead of accepting less than he believed he was worth, he made a decision that surprised absolutely no one who understood his mentality. He walked. He signed with Al Hilal, one of Saudi Arabia's biggest and most successful clubs, describing it as something close to Real Madrid's stature, but in Asia. Isn't that a fascinating thing about truly self-aware athletes? They know their value, and they refuse to accept anything less, even when the money on the table is still enormous by any normal standard. That's not arrogance, that's identity. It's a man who has spent his entire career being underestimated, only to keep proving, quietly and repeatedly, that he was right about himself the whole time. The quiet luxury of Karim Benzema now, let's talk about how he actually lives. Because if there's one word that captures Karim Benzema's approach to wealth, it's restraint. Not the absence of luxury, the mastery of it. Benzema doesn't flood social media with private jets and diamond watches the way some athletes do. His style leans toward what fashion insiders now call quiet luxury tailored fits. Muted tones, timeless pieces over flashy logos. It's the kind of wealth that whispers instead of shouts, and somehow, that whisper is louder than most people's shouting. He's been a long-standing face of major global fashion and sportswear brands, someone designers trust precisely because he carries clothing with effortless confidence rather than needing the clothing to make him look confident. Reports have pointed to a refined collection of high-performance vehicles, though true to form, Benzema rarely flaunts them publicly. His real estate holdings are said to span across Europe, quiet, private properties rather than headline-grabbing mansions plastered across gossip pages. Friends and former teammates have often described him as someone who prefers a small, trusted circle over a crowded room, someone who would rather spend an evening at home than be photographed at every event in town. His net worth today is widely estimated in the neighborhood of $200 million, a figure built not just from his playing career, but from years of smart brand partnerships and business decisions made with the same patience he shows on the pitch. It's worth noting how deliberately he seems to have built that image rights strategy in Saudi Arabia too, a long-term deal reportedly extending years into the future, well past his playing days, almost like he's already planning for a version of his life where football is no longer the main event. Here's what's remarkable though, even with the wealth, the trophies. The Ballon d'Or sitting on a shelf somewhere, Benzema has always talked about football itself as the thing that matters most to him. Trophies over headlines, substance over spectacle. In a sport increasingly obsessed with image, there's something almost rebellious about a superstar who chooses to be understated. It makes you wonder whether real confidence has less to do with how loudly you announce your success, and more to do with how little you feel the need to. Enter Zlatan, the man who needed no introduction. And now, let's talk about the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Because if Benzema is a masterclass in restraint, Zlatan Ibrahimović is a masterclass in the exact opposite, and somehow, it works just as beautifully. Zlatan's story starts in Rosengård, one of the roughest neighborhoods in Malmö, Sweden. Born to a Bosnian father and a Croatian mother who divorced when he was just a child, Zlatan's childhood was chaotic, sometimes painful, and far from the fairy tale that later surrounded his name. He's spoken openly over the years about how tough those early years were: the instability, the streets, the fights, the constant feeling of having to prove he belonged somewhere. Football became his outlet, and honestly, maybe even his salvation. There's something almost poetic about a kid from a neighborhood most people wrote off, growing up to become one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet. From Malmö, he rose through Ajax, then Juventus, then Inter Milan, where he became the most feared striker in Italian football. Then Barcelona, pairing sometimes uneasily with Lionel Messi, in a partnership that never quite found harmony but still produced a league title. Then back to Milan, then Paris Saint-Germain, where he became an absolute phenomenon, scoring goals in bunches while building a personality so large it eclipsed the club itself. Then Manchester United, where injuries tried to slow him down and simply couldn't. Then, remarkably, at an age when most players have long retired, LA Galaxy in Major League Soccer, where he announced his arrival to American fans in the most Zlatan way imaginable, with total, unshakable self-belief. He is the only player in history to represent 7 different clubs in the UEFA Champions League, over 500 club goals, 34 trophies, decades of dominance across 4 different decades of competitive football. Ask yourself how many athletes in any sport manage to stay elite from their teens all the way into their 40s. That kind of longevity isn't just talent, it's obsession. It's discipline dressed up as swagger. The brand called Zlatan here's where it gets really interesting though, because while his statistics are staggering, they're almost not even the most impressive thing about him. What Zlatan built off the pitch might be even bigger than what he built on it. Zlatan didn't just play football, he turned himself into a myth, a character. Somebody once said that Zlatan doesn't need to win a Ballon d'Or because he already won the personality award for football, forever. And whether you love him or find him a little too much, you cannot deny the genius of it. In an era where most footballers are media trained to give the blandest possible answers in interviews, Zlatan built an entire persona around saying the exact opposite: bold, unfiltered, unforgettable. It made him must-watch television every single time a microphone was near him. Across his career, his combined earnings from salaries and endorsements are estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars, with his overall net worth today widely reported to be somewhere around $190 million. He's partnered with global names like Nike, Volvo, and various other brands that wanted a piece of that unmistakable confidence. Brands that understood his face alone could sell a product without a single word being said. In 2015, in one of the most Zlatan purchases imaginable, he bought a former church in an upscale Stockholm neighborhood and converted it into a private residence. Because of course he did. Even his real estate choices carried a kind of theatrical flair that no branding agency could have scripted better. He owns a significant stake in Hammarby IF, a Swedish football club, giving him genuine equity in the sport rather than just a paycheck from it. It's a stake that reportedly appreciated significantly in value, turning what looked like a passion project into a genuinely smart long-term investment. And even after officially retiring from playing in 2023, Zlatan didn't disappear. He stepped into a senior advisory role at AC Milan under the club's ownership group, essentially becoming one of the most influential voices behind the scenes at one of Europe's most historic clubs, involved in everything from squad direction to the club's broader business strategy. He's also worked as a television analyst, most recently as part of major broadcast coverage of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, proving once again that his voice, his presence, and his brand are just as valuable now as his finishing ever was. Doesn't that tell you something? The confidence, the swagger, the larger-than-life quotes he became famous for, none of it was an accident. It was a business strategy disguised as personality, and it worked spectacularly. He essentially turned himself into a permanent headline generator, and headlines, as it turns out, are worth a fortune. The men behind the money. It's easy to reduce stories like these to number salaries, transfer fees, net worth estimates. But behind every figure is a human being, and both of these men have lived remarkably different private lives that shape the way they handle their fortunes today. Benzema has always kept his personal world fiercely guarded. He rarely discusses his relationships or family life in public, and that same protective instinct extends to how he manages his money. Those close to him have described a man who values loyalty above almost everything else, someone who keeps a tight circle of people he's trusted for years, rather than constantly expanding his orbit the way fame often demands. It's a mindset that likely comes from his upbringing in neighborhoods where trust has to be earned, not assumed. You learn early who deserves a seat at your table. Zlatan, by contrast, has been married to Helena Sager since the early 2000s, a businesswoman in her own right who has remained a steady presence throughout his entire career, even as he moved from club to club, country to country, decade to decade. Interestingly, for a man who built an entire public persona around bravado, His private life has actually been remarkably stable and consistent. Perhaps that's the real secret behind his longevity, a solid foundation at home that allowed him to take bigger risks everywhere else, from bold career moves to unapologetic business ventures. It's a reminder that the flashiest headlines rarely tell the whole story. Wealth built to last usually has quiet, steady foundations underneath it, no matter how loud the person standing on top of it might be. Lessons from two different kings. If you strip away the cars, the properties, and the endorsement deals for a moment, what you're really looking at are two blueprints for turning talent into lasting influence. And honestly, there's something for almost everyone to learn here, whether you're a footballer or not. From Benzema, the lesson is patience. Let your work speak. Build slowly, protect your image, and trust that consistency eventually gets recognized, even if it takes years longer than it should. From Zlatan, the lesson is boldness. Know your worth, say it out loud, and never apologize for taking up space in a world that constantly tries to make people smaller. Two lessons that sound almost contradictory, and yet both led to the exact same result: generational wealth, lasting relevance, and a legacy that will be discussed in football conversations for decades to come. Two philosophies of wealth. So here we are, two icons, two fortunes, two completely different relationships with fame and money. And honestly, isn't that what makes this comparison so fascinating? It's not really about who has more. It's about how differently two brilliant minds chose to wear the exact same kind of success. Benzema treats wealth like a quiet privilege, something to be enjoyed with discretion, almost as if drawing attention to it would somehow cheapen it. His fashion, his properties, his public image all radiate a kind of calm control. He lets the football do most of the talking, and when he does step into the spotlight off the pitch, it's with elegance rather than excess. There's a discipline to it, almost monastic in a strange way, for a man who could buy almost anything he wanted. Zlatan, on the other hand, treats wealth like a stage. He understood something early on that most athletes take years to figure out. If they ever do that in the modern world, your personality can be worth just as much as your talent. His confidence isn't arrogance for its own sake. It's marketing, storytelling, and entertainment, all rolled into one unforgettable package. Every interview, every quote, every headline became another brick in an empire that had almost nothing to do with actual football matches by the end of his career. And here's a question worth asking yourself honestly. If you had the kind of money these two men have, which path would you choose? Would you disappear into quiet comfort, letting your work speak entirely for itself? Or would you lean into the spotlight, turning your name into something bigger than the game itself? There's no wrong answer. That's what makes it so compelling. Some of the most successful people in any industry, not just football, tend to fall somewhere on this same spectrum: the quiet builders and the loud storytellers. Both can win. Both can build empires. They just do it in completely different languages. Building something that outlasts the game. What both of these men understand, though, in strikingly similar ways despite their different personalities, is that a football career, no matter how legendary, eventually ends. The whistle blows for the final time. The crowds go home, and what's left is either a legacy carefully built to last, or a fortune that quietly disappears within a few short years, like it has for so many athletes throughout history. It's a sobering statistic. Honestly, how many players who earn tens of millions during their careers end up with almost nothing once the cheering stops, simply because they never planned for life after the final whistle. Benzema and Ibrahimovic both seem determined to avoid that fate. Benzema's long-term image rights arrangements in Saudi Arabia, his brand partnerships, and his understated but strategic business decisions all point toward a man thinking several steps ahead. There's a version of Benzema's future that looks a lot like his present: comfortable, private, deliberate, still connected to football, but never dependent on it. Zlatan's ownership stakes, his advisory role at one of the biggest clubs in the world, his broadcasting career, these aren't the moves of someone content to fade quietly into retirement. These are the moves of men building something meant to last generations. something their families will still be talking about long after both of them are gone. And that, more than anything, might be the real story here. Not the cars, not the mansions, not even the trophies. It's the mindset. The understanding that talent gets you to the top, but only strategy keeps you there. Football is full of cautionary tales about players who had everything and lost it all, simply because nobody ever taught them how to think beyond the next contract. Benzema and Zlatan represent the opposite of that story, proof that greatness on the pitch, when paired with genuine business intelligence, can turn a playing career into something closer to a dynasty. Football has given the world countless legends, but very few manage to translate their genius on the pitch into genuine financial and cultural empires the way these two have. One did it with silence and sophistication. The other did it with noise and unapologetic confidence. And somehow both approaches earned the same level of respect from fans, from brands, and from the sport itself. Think about how differently their names land in conversation. Say Benzema, and people picture elegance, quiet dominance, a player who let his left foot do the arguing. Say Zlatan, and people picture chaos, charisma, quotes that somehow became more famous than most players' entire careers. Two completely different energies, two completely different men, and yet somehow they occupy the exact same tier of football immortality. So here's the real question to leave you with today. Whose lifestyle do you find more impressive? Is it Benzema's quiet, understated elegance, the kind of wealth that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone? Or is it Zlatan's bold, unmistakable confidence, the kind of presence that turns every room he walks into his own personal stage? There's no right answer, but there's definitely a version of that answer that says something about you too. Maybe it says whether you value calm control over chaos, or whether you believe that life is simply too short not to be loud about your success. Maybe it reveals which kind of legacy you'd want people telling stories about long after you're gone. Let us know what you think. And if you enjoyed diving into the luxury world of two football icons today, make sure you're subscribed, because there are so many more stories like this one still to come. Grab your free World Cup 7 Facts chapter guide and the full World Cup Bible 2026 ebook for just $77, links below. Subscribe to Football Luxury Lifestyle for more inside football's biggest fortunes. See you in the next one.